talk about the recession, and Ronald Reagan once said that the recession is when your neighbor loses his job, and a depression is when you lose yours. So while this scientific method is very efficient, I would like to hear from you guys. What do you think, whether we are in a recession or depression?
I think it will be very uneven. People that work in restaurants, for example, some certain types of manufacturing and other things. I wouldn't want to be working for an airline right now, or in the hospitality industry. So I think for those people, they will suffer, unfortunately, the repercussions. Are we in a depression? No, because I personally don't think we'll get there because of the advent of the digital economy, both in the United States and around the world. So I think it's going to be very uneven, though. That's, again, just my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, I would agree with Roger. I think one of the interesting things right now is with people losing jobs, the gig economy, as well as just full-time employment, we're in the situation where you can be location agnostic when you're working, right? And so a lot of companies are now able to recruit from across the country, whereas they may not have been able to before. More companies are, as many older organizations historically weren't, but now they are. And so while I think, while I agree with that, we are in a recession, I think it is creating some opportunities for people to explore outside of their immediate footprint, take on side hustles and things like that. And to Roger's point, I think the technology has really made that far more possible than it has in the past.
I really don't think it matters whether it's technically called a recession or a depression. The key is how is it impacting you and how are you managing to get through it. So I think people need to focus on how they can survive whatever is to come.
I think that there's a lot of fear for the future. I think we may not be in that bad a shape right now, but we watch the government spend money like a drunken sailor, and that will cause inflation. And it has to. You can't just print money and live on it and not have inflation. And so I think right now it's a recession, and it's okay. We're hanging on. Most of us are hanging on, but there's a huge fear about tomorrow.
Lance, so many people can't make ends meet nowadays, and obviously in such an emergency period, you can do a lot of not very smart things that can lead you to harming your credit score. What do you think you should refrain from doing in order to avoid that?
I think the most important thing that people can do is educate themselves about how credit scores work. There are 5 general components that really impact how your credit score is calculated. And the most important one's your payment history, followed by the amounts you owe, the length of your credit history overall, the mix of the types of credits you have, and whether you're applying for new credit or not. So based on those 5 factors, you have to try to manage your money so that you can keep your credit score in good shape if you need it in the future. So the most important thing I would suggest is to make minimum payments on all of your debt. If you miss payments, that's really going to ding your score, because according to FICO's credit score models, payment history is about 35% of your score. So just make minimum payments across the board and don't worry about paying things off beyond that right now. And then if you can, on your credit cards, try to keep the amount you charge on your card to less than 30% of your credit limit. That's another big factor of your credit score. And then other than that, just avoid applying for new credit if you can, and try not to close your oldest accounts to try to keep your credit score in good shape.
Roger, kind of a related question. Again, a lot of people are having hard time in making ends meet, and a lot of people are currently unemployed. What, let's say, 3 personal finance management tips would you give to a person who is laid off or maybe on furlough?
Well, I think the first thing is to sit down and take a look at your budget. We all, we have expenditures that are, critical, such as our rent or our mortgage, food, things like that. but look at your budget and look where you're spending money, and cut out things that you can cut out to save money. Certainly check into any unemployment that might be available to you, including the federal program, which right now is coming to an end, but I would be shocked if Congress didn't extend it. But that's just my opinion. So that would be number two. And then certainly, I think as has come up here, look at your skills, and are there side gigs you can apply for? Driving Uber probably isn't real lucrative right now, but if you have if you're in a situation where you have computer skills, or you're into e-commerce, there may be things you can do as a side gig there. But those would be the three things I would recommend to most people.
So, Sally, we kind of drifted into doom and gloom, and I want you to cheer us up a little bit. I just read in a recent Gallup poll that Americans are quite optimistic, and give them a reason to be optimistic. Is there a silver lining? Is there something that you can highlight that can, send a positive message to what we are about to see now with the economy?
I looked at the Gallup poll, and it's very encouraging. 90% of Americans think that 5 years from now, when this is all over, that things will be positive. And even right now, only 14% said that their finances were poor. And so we're apparently not quite sinking under the water yet. We are very optimistic, very, very resilient. And that doesn't really take away from the pain caused by some of the people in that 14% who are losing everything. Say the person who is dependent on tips and one day it was just gone, or the person who has a small business. Restaurants in my little town are closing their doors permanently, and their dreams are shattered. So that cannot be downplayed. However, two of the biggest problems in the Seattle area are crowded roads and the outrageously high cost of housing near any good jobs. And all of a sudden, the roads are great, and people are working from a distance. And we've been saying for decades, why can't we work at home? And all of a sudden we are. And some friends of mine just moved to the country a couple of hours away, and he still has his job in Seattle. That was not possible 4 months ago. And so that's a breakthrough. That's a huge breakthrough, and I don't think we'll ever go back. I think that, we can spread out across the country and live where we want and still have good, meaningful work. And that's more than a silver lining, I think.